City, Mount Holly, New Jersey. And take a look at the sun. The sun was the most staggering thing that I think millions of us saw as we were waking up this morning, because it was illuminated with that bright orange color. That was all thanks to the particulate matter that is in the atmosphere from numerous wildfires that are burning in Canada, that is kind of working its way southward. So we are live right now in New Jersey. Michael Estime is joining me now to kind of talk about what we're seeing out there, because I can see a little bit of haze behind you, Michael, but at least currently it doesn't look too bad, thankfully.
Yeah, that's really what the optimistic note here is. So, Kendall, when I'm breathing, I can't smell or like feel the direct effects to my respiratory system in terms of the soot that's in the air. How speaking with on by, and we had a good little chit chat, and she was telling me, and I completely concur. I wear contact lenses, Kendall,
Mm-hmm.
and what's so interesting is that I can feel the dryness in my
Huh.
eyes,
Okay.
and it's just been exacerbated by the fact that we have this soot in the air that's helping to kind of promote more dryness outside. So yeah, for folks that, have contact lenses and you're blinking, you can absolutely feel your contact lenses in your eyes just because of how that particulate matter is drying out the air.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, Michael, that you bring up, because thankfully I don't have to wear contacts, but I do suffer from asthma. So I know that this morning when I was stepping outside, I felt it in my lungs. I felt that tightness. I also kind of felt that
Hmm.
scratchy throat. So it's not just sensitive groups that are being impacted by the poor air quality from the wildfire smoke. It's also everyone, because these kinds of conditions they're unhealthy for everyone to be outside for extended periods of time.
It really is, and especially for not only young children, but also for the elderly and folks that have upper respiratory issues. If you have asthma, today's probably not the best time to go for that outdoor jog. Let's keep it inside on the treadmill. Let's dive in and talk a little bit more about what is the cause for all of this haze that you're seeing, not only in New York City, but in Boston, Philadelphia, Baltimore. You're seeing that haze outside with those air quality alerts that are in place for all of those cities. Basically, it's all due to what's going on in Canada. We have literally over 200 active wildfires that are over 100 acres in size that are burning right now as we speak in Canada, again, charring millions of acres. And what's going on is we have that high pressure center that's inducing not only lots of dry air in place, but also is helping to pump in all kinds of heat. So you're talking about heat, you're talking about dry air, you're talking about the winds as well. All three of those combined really starts to exacerbate that wildfire threat, and that's exactly what we're seeing. Let's take you to our smoke tracker and show you what it looks like, because everywhere you're seeing that brownish color from Indianapolis through Chicago, parts of Metro Detroit as well. I actually have some family that's vacationing as we speak in Nova Scotia, my dad, and he was sharing with me that, yeah, it is like choking him out up that way just because of all of the smoke up in Canada. All of that is being, again, fueled by that high pressure center. Notice it spinning in that clockwise fashion, dragging down on the right side of that. So through Manitoba, through parts of Ontario, and then eventually into the parts of the upper Midwest. That's helping to break and bring in some of that smoke. It's been really historic, in fact, as well. How about this? The 10-year average when it comes to how many acres are usually charred up to this.
Grandest, Cherokee, and everybody else that's in that has not said Grand Rising or Halito or anything of the sort. I guess you just want to tap in. Well, Grand Risings to you guys as well. Now, if you guys see, it says a 10-year average of acres burned, 370,000 acres in a 10-year average. Now, since this fire started, right, it's been 6,672,000 acres within the last months. It's been not month, I'm sorry. It's been a couple of weeks. I think it started like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, so on and so forth. They said it was a little bit before that in the Yucatan and so on and so forth. But my thing is this: why are all these fires being so emitted? They're not putting them out. There hasn't been anything done to put the fires out. They let it conclude over the entire Canadian area, which is, as we know, England. So they are burning all of the crops in England, the old world England, Toronto, Seneca region, everything that we've been talking about for the last few months, they are burning up the soil, which means what? They're possibly burning ancestors and people that have been buried. When they do things like this, it's not always natural. They're trying to say that it is from the they're trying to say that it is from the lightning, right? We're gonna get into that article that talks about that in a minute. I want you guys to hear a little more of this so you can get some details on it. But when I say yes, sis, they burning up all the crops and all of the air quality. My sister called me when she gets out of work early this morning. Like, I've been up for a minute now. She forgets about the time difference. Sometimes she's worked overnight. She'd be tired. But either way, she sent me a video and it's like horrible, like very horrible. She's talking to me on the video, so I'm not going to play it, but it's horrible. And my baby is there as well. She's actually in New York City. My sister's actually in Rochester, where we're from, since last year, and they are having it probably worse because Rochester, anything would reach Rochester before it would to New York City. It would be Buffalo, Niagara Falls, the Rochester, Wayne County, all of these areas, all of Seneca region. All of Seneca region is getting smoked out, which means what's going to happen next? That's the question, right? All right, let's get to this. It's almost over.
This point, just over 370,000. Where are we at for this year? Over 6.5 million acres have been charred. Again, those temperatures way above normal as well. And, you know, Kendall, it's going to be one of those deals where if we don't see some significant rain in New York City, in Boston, in Philly, in Baltimore, this is going to persist.
It's never
at
been a
least for the
problem
next
with
several
rain.
days before we see any
Look at the
welcome
haze.
drenching rain
That's
to kind
the
of cleanse
city,
the
New
atmosphere,
York City.
Kendall.
You're exactly right. That's why it's imperative that folks,
Jersey
especially that
is
suffer from
right
kind
over
of
the
chronic
bridge.
respiratory
Same area.
issues,
Looks just
are
like
aware
that.
of the dangers and the Mike, thanks so much for that.
I'm Amy Freeze. Well,
So, guys,
after 25 years.
You're going to have to close down.
Yes.
The power crisis is the result of decades of mismanagement and massive corruption. Criminal gangs ready to kill anyone who tries to stop the looting.
I was shaking badly. I was literally lying like this, and I started gasping for air, a mixture of cyanide and sodium arsenite.
Today, South Africa still gets almost all its power from burning coal. It's a lethal addiction.
It's killing us. This coal is killing us.
The answer to many is a green revolution. But can Western money and pressure help South Africa embrace renewable energy? Or is the rot here simply too deep?
It's very depressing. It's very concerning. Our country is in a serious, dark place.
Stage 4 load shedding will continue to be implemented until further notice. It says that stage 6 will be implemented at 8 p.m. tonight until 5 a.m.
How did it come to this? South Africa, the continent's great economic powerhouse, is in deep trouble. Long daily power Johannesburg and across the country. Dawn and the traffic lights are still not working. This is Alexandra Township, a poor neighborhood on the edge of Johannesburg.
Every day here,
the power goes out, sometimes for 4 hours, sometimes for 8 or more. Officially, it's called load shedding, which sounds almost helpful, almost pleasant. But the truth is that these power cuts are having a devastating impact in a country with a stagnant economy and soaring unemployment. And it's particularly in poor neighborhoods like this one that the effects are being felt the most. Suzeke Musa has run this bar for 25 years.
We don't have money because of the power, because of the electricity. You can see now, it's dark.
Are you going to survive in your business?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
The power shortage is taking the business out.
It must be stressful.
Very, very, very stressful. Very, very stressful.
The cash transfer business next door is on the ropes too.
We sit more than 6 hours doing nothing. It's our salaries. If we don't work, we don't get paid.
Essentially, this economy has ground to a halt because we cannot provide factories, industry with electricity that's needed to produce. That has a direct impact on poor people who lose jobs, who cannot work, who cannot earn money. And poverty kills. Poverty leads to young people not getting the education they deserve and so forth and so forth. At that level, I think this is treason.
Why treason? Well, that's what we're going to try to find out. We're just heading out of Johannesburg now, and almost immediately we are in coal country. You can see the coal-fired power stations on the horizon, and you can smell the coal too. Now, in theory, this huge industry is supposed to be quietly transitioning to renewables, to solar and wind. South Africa has huge resources of both. But in practice, that transition is proving very difficult and very dangerous. We're heading to a town called eMalahleni. The word itself means place of coal. If you want to understand South Africa's energy crisis, this is a good place to start. The town is surrounded by mines and by criminal gangs fighting for a slice of the coal industry. With us in the car, a local guide, wary of being identified. So we're coming just to the edge here of what is an illegal mine, an illegal coal mine. I'm just going to go along the corner here, is that okay? We're told there are at least 60 so-called black sites in this region where coal is stolen or traded illegally. What's extraordinary is quite how brazen it is. It's happening every day out in the open, in daylight.
Even at night, we hear gunshots. Gunshots. Even they are fighting amongst themselves.
The different gangs?
Yes.
We need to be careful then.
Yes.
Because there's so much money at stake.
Yes.
That they will kill for it.
They'll do that. They'll do that.
Let's see if we can try and talk to one of the truck drivers with the coal once they've left this area. Is it quite a dangerous business to be involved in?
Yeah, sometimes it is, because you don't know whether the mine is it illegal or legal. And then you take your truck to that mine only to find out that that mine is illegal.
Local journalists investigating the gangs run huge risks.
It really is a brutal province for anybody who wants to expose the truth.
A gangster kind of economy.
Yeah, definitely. Life is cheap in this country. You can hire a hitman for 10,000 rand. That's $400. So the system is, I think, rotten to the core.
And dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely.
But stolen coal is only part of a much bigger problem. Spread across this province are a dozen coal-fired power plants. They look like ships that have run aground. We're now driving to one named Tutuga, a huge plant. But today, it's barely functioning, brought to its knees by years of mismanagement, looting, and sabotage, like this fire caught on camera at a nearby plant.
The sort of scams that have been going on at power stations like this one range from pretty basic fraud, for instance, inflating the price of simple protective gear by up to 800 times, to much more complex things like sabotage, so jamming key pumping stations and also putting rocks in the coal supply to damage the whole system. And then, of course, you have to bring in new contractors to fix things with more inflated prices.
Tortuga is such a lucrative target for criminal gangs that the last plant manager wore body armor to work. His successor is hoping he can manage without.
So you're happy about your security?
Okay. Look, I don't think. Can we not go there?
It's a serious question, though. I mean, your predecessor wore a bulletproof jacket because he was so concerned about the criminality here, but you're not. You think that's been resolved?
I'm not worried. At this stage, there's nothing substantial for me to get worried. So it is business. I'm focusing on recovering the station.
But the dangers here are real. We've arranged to meet a businessman involved in the local coal industry. He's now scared for his life after being threatened by criminals. We've agreed to hide his identity for his own protection.
It was very terrible because it was the first time someone pulls a gun on me.
Held it to your head?
Yeah, held it to my head. Told me I must do 1, 2, 3.
Did they threaten your family?
They did. They told me they are not afraid of anybody. They are politically connected.
So they're above the law.
Basically.
Connections are crucial. Investigations by South African journalists have revealed alleged links between corruption in the coal industry and some of the country's most powerful politicians. This leaked intelligence document claims to identify 4 criminal cartels, each with a network of henchmen and assassins, and links to senior government officials. A sign here, to many, of the rot within the governing ANC.
The ANC cannot solve this problem because the ANC is as involved as everyone else in this problem. It's so deep in the rot, it doesn't know how to extricate itself, and any attempt to fix the problem exacerbates it.
Can anyone stop the rot? In 2019, a businessman, Andre de Ruyter, was brought in to clean up the state power utility, Eskom. He was blunt about the challenges.
So the stays were cut, the tower was pushed over onto the other line, but nothing was stolen. So this is not an economic crime. This was clearly now an act of sabotage, and I think we can call it as such.
But that outspokenness would soon get him in trouble. In fact, as we'll see in a moment, it would get him poisoned. The pressure to break South Africa's dependence on coal has been building for years. And yet, south of Johannesburg, machines the size of apartment blocks still scrape at the earth to expose more rich seams.
South Africa is addicted to coal. Right now, 85% of all the power consumed in this country comes from burning this stuff. That's compared with less than 2% in somewhere like the UK, which is why this relatively small economy is still one of the world's great CO2 emitters.
And here's the impact. Eight-year-old Princess Matsibula has grown up in coal country.
When she struggles to breathe, it's very hard because she'll be quiet, she won't eat, she won't talk, she won't do anything.
Official information about pollution levels here is curiously hard to get, but leaked studies suggest this province is among the most polluted places on Earth, and that the coal industry is killing thousands of people every year.
My wish is they have to cancel the coal so that we can breathe a clean air.
Do you think they will?
They must coal. because it's killing us. This coal is killing us.
These
So when you think about this, right, this is like continued genocide in an area that has always had a created monopoly that's been preyed upon, right? Thinking about the Americas, right? We went through this, you know, this particular book, when just thinking about this morning after I talked with my sister, I'm thinking about Illinois. I remember reading how the excavation of different things, you know, the mounds there, so on and so forth. So yeah, sis. So yeah, we're about to get into this real quick.
Power on.
Forgot to charge my Bluetooth, so
pairing.
let's hope that
Bluetooth
everything is
connected.
okay, because I definitely want to get into this story. So let's go.
Instead of being confined to the geological age which bears his name, must be
Hold on, I want to forward to this other page real quick.
the topography, rivers, soil acts, climatology. The hierarchies and topography of Tli state are based upon and correspond with its geological formations. The surface, inclination and the direction of the interior drainage faces the southwest. Rock River, flowing southwesterly through one of the most beautiful and fertile regions, enters the Mississippi just below the Upper Rapids. The Des Plaines, rising in Wisconsin west of Lake Michigan, and flowing southward, and the Kankakee, rising in Indiana south of the lake, and flowing westward, form the Illinois. The latter stream, the largest in the state, courses across it in a southwesterly direction, and falls into the Mississippi not far from the city of Alton. The Kaskaskia rises near the eastern boundary of the state and the 40th parallel of latitude, flows in a southerly west direction, and forms a junction with the Mississippi not far from the town which bears its name. These and other smaller streams flow through valleys originally excavated in solid limestone by ancient rivers anterior to the formation of the drift. The latter material was subsequently deposited in these primitive water courses from 10 to more than 200 feet in thickness, and now forms the channel of the existing streams. For the formation of these ancient riverbeds of such great width and frequently excavated several hundred feet in hard carboniferous rocks, the diminished waters now flowing within their lining of drift are wholly inadequate. Furthermore, the alluvial valleys which the rivers now occupy are far too broad to correspond with the present volume and swiftness of the waters. The alluvial bottoms of the Illinois are nearly equal to those of the Mississippi, though the latter has a current twice as rapid and a quantity of water times as large as the former stream. The smaller streams of the state occupy valleys filled with drift, through which the waters have been unable to cut their way to the ancient troughs below. Owing to this, the stratified rocks in many localities have never become exposed, and it is difficult for the geologist to determine the character of the underlying formations. Though the surface of the state is generally level or slightly undulating, there are some portions of it considerably elevated. The highest summits are found along the northern border between Freeport and Galena, known as the Mounds. The culminant points of altitude are 200 feet above the surrounding country, 575 above the avatars of Lake Michigan, 000 above the junction of the Ohio and Mississippi, and 1,150 above the ocean. The tops of the mounds coincide with the original elevation of the surface, and their present condition as isolated hills is due to denuding, topography and rivers. 15 forces which have carried away the surrounding strata. Mounds occur in other places, some of them having a height of 50 feet, and frequently a crown of timber upon their summits, which gives them the appearance of islands in surrounding seas of prairie verdure. Besides the mounds, there are in the state 5 principal axes of disturbance and elevation. The most northerly of these enters it in Stevenson County, crossing Rock River near Dixon, and the Illinois not far from LaSalle. Magnesian. Limestone, a Hillarian formation. At LaSalle, the cold strata are uplifted to the surface from a depth of 400 feet, which shows that the disturbance occurred after their formation. On the Mississippi, in Calhoun County, there occurred an upheaval of the strata, attended with a down throw of more than 1,000 feet. On the south side of the axis, the Burlington limestone of the subcarboniferous series had its strata tilted up almost perpendicular to the horizon. On the north side, the St. Peter's sandstone and Magnesian limestone were elevated and formed the bluff known as Sandstone Cape. This bluff, at the time of its elevation, was doubtless a mountain mass of 1,500 feet in height, and has since been reduced to its present altitude by the denuding effects of water. The same axis of disturbance, trending in a southeastern direction, crosses the Illinois 6 miles above its mouth, and farther southward again, strikes the Mississippi and disappears in its channel. Farther down the river, another uplift dislocates the strata near the southern line of St. Clair County. This disturbance extends by way of Columbia, in Monroe County, to the Mississippi, and brings to the surface the same limestone and the St. Peter's sandstone. Again, farther southward, an uplifted mountain ridge extends from Grand Tower, on the Mississippi 1 to Shawneetown, on the Ohio, on the west of the Mississippi. It brings the lower Silurian rocks to the surface. In Jackson County, Illinois, it tilts up the Devonian limestone at an angle of 25 degrees, and farther eastward the subcarboniferous limestone becomes the surface rock. The last important point of disturbance occurs in Alexander County, constituting the Grand Chain, a dangerous reef of rocks extending across the Mississippi and forming a bluff on the Illinois shore 70 feet high. Passing thence in a southeastern direction, it crosses the Ohio a few miles above Caledonia, in Pulaski County. The formation of the soil is due to geological and other physical agencies. From long habit we are accustomed to look upon it without considering its wonderful properties and great importance in the economy of animal life. Not attractive itself, yet its productions far transcend the most elaborate works of art, and having but little diversity of appearance, the endless variety which pervades the vegetable and animal kingdoms springs from its prolific abundance. Its mysterious elements, incorporated in the structure of plants, clothe the earth with verdure and pleasant landscapes. They bloom in the flower, load the breeze with fragrant odors, blush in the clustering fruit, whiten the fields with harvests. For the supply of food, furnish the tissues which, wrought into fabrics, decorate and protect the body, and yield the curative agents for healing the diseases to which it is subject. From the source also proceed the elements which, entering the domain Geological Survey of Illinois, by A. Worthen, of animal life, pulsate in the blood, suffuse the cheek with the glow of health, speak into the eye, in the nerve become the recipients of pleasure and pain, render the tongue vocal with music and eloquence, and fill the brain, the seat of reason and throne of the imagination, with its glowing imagery and brilliant fancies. But, while the soil is the source of such munificent gifts, it is also the insatiable bourne to which they must all return. The lofty tree, spreading its vast canvas of leaves to the winds, and breasting the storms of 1,000 years, finally dies, and undergoing decomposition, enriches the earth in which it grew. The king of beasts, whose loud roar can be heard for miles, and whose immense power enables him to prey upon the denizens of his native jungles, cannot resist the fate which at length consigns a sinewy frame to the mold. Even the lord of the lower world, notwithstanding his exalted position and grasp of intellect, must likewise suitor physical death and mingle with the sod that forms his grave. The soil was originally formed by the decomposition of rocks. These, by long exposure to the air, water, and frost, became disintegrated, and the comminuted material acted upon by vegetation forms the fruitful mold of the surface. When of local origin, it varies in composition with the changing material from which it is derived. If sandstone prevails, it is too porous to retain fertilizing agents. If limestone is in excess, it is too hot and dry, and if slate predominates, the resulting clay is too wet and cold. Hence it is only a combination of these and other ingredients that can properly adapt the earth to the growth of vegetation. Happily for Illinois, the origin of its surface formations precludes the possibility of sterile extremes arising from local causes. As we have stated before, almost the entire surface of the state is a stratum of drift, formed by the decomposition of every variety of rock, and commingled in a homogeneous mass by the agents employed in its distribution. This immense deposit, varying from 10 to 200 feet in thickness, required for its production physical conditions which do not exist. We must go far back in the history of the planet when the polar world was a desolation of icy wastes. From these dreary realms of enduring frosts, vast glaciers, reaching southward, dipped into the waters of an inland sea, extending over a large part of the upper Mississippi Valley. These ponderous masses, moving southward with irresistible power, tore immense boulders from their parent ledges and incorporated them in their structure. By means of these, in their further progress, they grouped and planed down the subjacent rocks, gathering up and carrying with them part of the abraded material and strewing their track for hundreds of miles with the remainder. On reaching the shore of the interior sea, huge icebergs were projected from their extremities into the waters, which, melting as they floated into warmer latitudes, distributed the detrital matter they contained over the bottom. Thus, long before the plains of Illinois clanked with the din of railroad trains, these ice-formed navies plowed the seas in which they were submerged, and distributed over them cargoes of soil-producing sediment. Mariner walked their crystal decks to direct their course, and no pennon attached to their glittering masts trailed in the winds that urged them forward 5. Yet they might, perhaps, have sailed under the flags of 100 succeeding empires, each as old as the present nationalities of the earth, during the performance of their labors. This splendid soil-forming deposit is destined to make Illinois the great center of American wealth and population. Perhaps no other country of the same extent on the face of the globe can boast a soil so ubiquitous in its distribution and so universally productive. Enriched by all the minerals in the crust of the earth, it really contains a great variety of constituents. Since plants differ so widely in the elements of which they are composed, this multiplicity of composition is the means of growing a great diversity of crops, and the amount soil so
you guys to hear that
100
again.
succeeding empires, each as old as the present nationalities of the earth, during the performance of their labors. This splendid soil-forming deposit is destined to make Illinois the great center of American wealth and population. Perhaps no other country of the same extent on the face of the globe can boast a soil so ubiquitous in its distribution and so universally productive. Enriched by all the minerals in the crust of the earth, it really contains a great variety of constituents. Since plants differ so widely in the elements of which they are composed, this multiplicity of composition is the means of growing a great diversity of crops, and the amount produced is correspondingly large. So great is the fertility, that years of continued cultivation do not materially diminish the yield, and should sterility be induced by excessive working, the subsoil can be made available. This extends from 2 to 10, and even 20 and 30 feet in depth, and when mixed with the mold of the surface, gives it a greater producing capacity than it had at first. Other states have limited areas as productive, but nearly the entire surface of Illinois is arable land, and when brought under cultivation will become one continued scene of verdure and agricultural profusion. With not half of its area improved, the state has become the granary of the continent, far excels any other member of the Union in packing pork, fat tends more than half of all the cattle shipped to the eastern markets, and if prices were as remunerative, could furnish other products to a corresponding extent. Graded to a proper level, and free from obstructions, the state has become the principal theater for the use and invention of agricultural implements. Owing to the cheapness attending the use of machinery, with a given amount of capital, a greater extent of lands can be cultivated. The severity of the labor expended is also proportionately diminished, and those engaged in husbandry have time to become acquainted with the theoretical as well as the practical part of their duties. The profound philosophy involved in the Grotleroff plans furnishes a field for investigation and experiment requiring the highest order of talent and the most varied and extensive attainments. Agriculture, aided by chemistry, vegetable physiology, and kindred branches of knowledge, will greatly enhance the productiveness of the land. Thus, with the advantages of science, a superior soil, and the use of machinery, agriculture will always remain the most attractive, manly, and profitable branch of industry in which the people of Illinois can engage, contributing more than any other pursuit to individual comfort, and proportionally adding to the prosperity of the state. The cultivation of the soil in all ages has furnished employment for the largest and best portion of mankind. 5. Yet the honor to which they are entitled has never been fully acknowledged. Though their occupation is the basis of national prosperity, and upon its progress more than any other branch of industry depends the march of civilization, yet its history remains to a great extent unwritten. Historians duly chronicle the feats of the warrior who ravages the earth and beggars its inhabitants, but leaves unnoticed the labors of him who causes the desolated country to bloom again, and heals with the balm of plenty the miseries of war. When true worth is duly recognized, instead of the mad ambition which subjugates nations to acquire power, the heroism which subdues the soil and feeds the world, will be the theme of the poet's song and the orator's eloquence. The origin of the prairies has been a source of speculation. One theory is that the soil resulted from the decomposition of vegetable matter underwater, and that the attending conditions were incompatible with the growth of timber. According to this view, prairies are at present in process of formation along the shores of lakes and rivers. During river freshets, the heaviest particles settle nearest the channel, and here by repeated deposits the banks first became elevated above the floods. These natural levees, becoming sufficiently high, are overgrown with timber and enclose large areas of bottom land back from the river, by which they are frequently inundated. The waters on these flats, when the flood subsides, are cut off from the river and form sloughs, frequently of great extent. Their shallow and stagnant waters are first invaded by mosses and other aquatic plants which grow under the surface, and contain in their tissues lime, alernina, and silica, the constituents of clay. They also subsist immense numbers of small mollusks and other diminutive creatures, and the constant decomposition of both vegetables and animals forms a stratum of clay corresponding with that which underlies the finished prairies. As the marshy bottoms are by this means built up to the surface of the water, the mosses are then intermixed with coarse grasses, which become more and more abundant as the depth diminishes. These reedy plants, now rising above the surface, absorb and decompose the carbonic acid gas of the atmosphere, and convert it into woody matter, which at first forms a clayey mold and afterwards the black mold of the prairie. Same agencies, now operating in the ponds skirting the banks of rivers, originally formed all the prairies of the Mississippi Valley. We have already seen that the surface of the land was submerged during the dispersion of the drift, and in its slow emergence afterward, it was covered by vast sheets of shallow water, which first formed swamps and subsequently prairies. The present want of horizontality in some of them is due to the erosive action of water. The drainage, moving in the direction of the creeks and rivers, at length furrowed the surface with tortuous meanders, resulting finally in the present undulating prairies. The absence of trees, the most remarkable feature, is attributable first to the formation of humic acid, which favors the growth of herbaceous plants and retards that of forests. Secondly, trees absorb by their roots large quantities of air, which they cannot obtain when the surface is under water or covered by a compact sod. And thirdly, they require solid attachment. Marshy flats are unable to furnish. When, however, the lands become dry, and the sod is broken by the plow or otherwise destroyed, they introduce all the varieties of arbuscent vegetation common to their latitude. Indeed, since the settlement of Illinois, the woodland area of many localities extends far beyond its original limits. The foregoing theory requires a large, unvarying quantity of water, while another, perhaps equally plausible, is based on aqueous conditions almost the reverse. It is well known that the different continental masses of the globe are, in general, surrounded by zones of timber, and have within them belts of grasses, and, centrally, large areas of inhospitable deserts. On the Atlantic side, prairies JL9 of North America, there is a continuous wooded region, extending from Hudson Bay to the Gulf of Mexico, while on the Pacific a semi-lar arborescent growth embraces some of the most gigantic specimens of the vegetable kingdom. Within these bands of timber, which approach each other in their northern and southern reaches, are the great prairies extending transversely across the Mississippi Valley, and having their greatest expansion in the valley of the Missouri. Farther westward, from increasing dryness, the grasses entirely disappear, and the great American desert usurps their place. This alternation of forest, prairie, and desert corresponds with the precipitation of moisture. The ocean is the great source of moisture, and the clouds are the vehicles employed for its distribution over the land. From actual measurement, it has been ascertained that they discharge most of their water on the exterior rim of the continents, that farther toward the interior the amount precipitated is less, and finally it is almost entirely supplanted by the aridity of the desert. In a section extending across the continent from New York to San Francisco, the amount of rainfall strikingly coincides with the alternations of woodland, prairie, and desert. The region extending from New York, which has an annual rainfall of 42 inches, to Ann Arbor, having 29 inches, is heavily covered with timber. Thence to Galesburg, 111, having 26 inches *, is mostly prairie interspersed with clumps of forest. Thence to Fort Laramie, having 20 inches, it rapidly changes to a continuous prairie. Thence to Fort Union, having only 3 inches, it becomes an inhospitable desert. And thence to San Francisco, having 22 inches, it changes to luxuriant forests. Illinois is thus within the region of alternate wood and prairie, with the latter largely predominating. This wide belt, owing to a difference of capacity for retaining moisture, has its eastern and western borders thrown into irregular outlines, resembling deeply indented bays and projecting headlands. As the result of decrease in moisture, only 90 arborescent species are found in the wooded region, which on the east extends a considerable distance into Illinois, and all of these, except 6, disappear farther westward. The diminished precipitation in Illinois and the Great Valley east of the Mississippi, while it has an unfavorable effect on the growth of trees, seems rather to enhance the growth of crops. In further confirmation of this theory, the same physical laws which have diversified North America with forest, prairie, and desert, have produced similar effects upon other continents. Hence it is that South America has its Atacama, Africa its Great Sahara, Europe its barren steppes, and Asia its rainless waste of sand and salt, extending through more than 100 degrees of longitude. All these desert places, where local causes do not interfere, are girt about by grassy plains and belts of forest. The subjoined table has been kindly furnished us by Professor Livingstone, of Lombard University. It will be seen that the mean annual temperature of Growl's Tuck is 48 degrees and its mean annual precipitation of moisture 24 inches. The southern and western portions of the state slightly exceed the above figures. Jan-I Feb Ms Ir Jo Ap May June July Aug 1st September Oczog Dec and NH2 feet HE dot WHS 3 T3 $7 2 pound PJF 13 260 14 240 14 30 degrees R 28 10 degrees J 29 70 degrees J 32 J 59 degrees 40 71 inches 43 630 33 5 degree as 39 degrees 11 tube minus. Some eminent physicists refer the treeless character of the great grassy plains to the mechanical and chemical character of the soil. Perhaps, in the constantly varying physical conditions of different localities, the forces alluded to in these theories advanced may all cooperate to produce these great grassy expanses which constitute so large a part of the Earth's surface. To Illinois they are inexhaustible sources of wealth, and as intimately connected with her destiny as the great coal fields which underlie them. Both are the expression of natural law, both destined to furnish the state with the elements of future greatness and power, and both prophetic of labor, intelligence, and the enjoyment of a noble man. The climatology of the state, in common with other countries of the same latitude, has 4 seasons. The melting snows of winter, generally attended by rains, convert the rich soil of the prairie into mud, and render early spring the most unpleasant part of the year. The heat of summer, although more intense than in the same latitude on the Atlantic, is greatly relieved by the constant breezes which fan the prairies. Autumn, with slowly diminishing heats, terminates in the serene and beautiful season known as Indian summer. Its mild and uniform temperature, soft and hazy atmosphere, and forests beautifully tinted with the hues of dying foliage, all conspire to render it the pleasant part of the year. Next come the boreal blasts of winter, with its social firesides, and tinkling bells in the mystic light of the moon, as merry sloughs skim over the level snow-clad prairies. The winter has its sudden changes of temperature, causing colds and other diseases arising from extreme vicissitudes of weather. This is the most unfavorable feature of the climate, which in other respects is salubrious. The general belief that Illinois is scourged by bilious diseases is substantially unfounded. It is well known that the pioneers of Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan suffered far worse from malarious diseases than the malaria of marshes and unsubdued soils in wooded districts, excluded from the light of the sun and a free circulation of air, is far more malignant than that of the prairie. Having the full benefit of these counteracting agents, the most distinguishing feature of the climate is its subtropical summers and the Arctic severities of its winters. The newly arrived English immigrant is at first inclined to complain of these climatic extremes, but a short residence in the country soon convinces him that many of the most kindly fruits and plants could not be cultivated and matured without them. Owing to this tropical element of the summer, the peach, grape, sweet potato, cotton, corn, and other plants readily mature in Illinois, though its mean annual temperature is less than that of England, where their cultivation is impossible. These facts show that a high temperature for a short season is more beneficial to some of the most valued plants than a moderate temperature long continued. This is well exemplified in the cultivation of our great staple, maize, or Indian corn, which, wherever the conditions are favorable, yields a greater amount of nutriment with a given amount of labor than any. *See geographical surveys of the state, and Foster's physical geography of the Mississippi Valley. Foster's physical geography, climatology. 21 known cereal. It was originally a tropical grass, and when cultivated in regions of a high and protracted temperature, exhibits a strong tendency to revert to its original condition. In the Gulf states it grows to a greater height than farther northward, but its yield of seed is correspondingly less. In the valleys opening seaward along the Pacific slope, it attains a medium size, but fails to mature for the want of sufficient heat. Hence the districts of its maximum production must be far north of its native latitudes, and have the benefit of short but intense summer heats. In Illinois and adjacent parts of the Great Valley, its greatest yield is about the 41st parallel, and though far less imposing in its appearance than on the Gulf, its productive capacity is said to be fourfold greater than either there or on the Pacific. It is wonderful that a plant should undergo such a great transformation in structure and natural habits, and that its greatest producing capacity should be near the northern limits of its possible cultivation. These facts suggest questions of great scientific value relative to the development of other plants by removing them from their native localities. One of the causes which assist in imparting these extremes to the climate may be thus explained. The different continental masses during the summer become rapidly heated under the influence of the sun, while the surrounding oceans are less sensitive to its effects. As the result, the logs bordering on the sea have a comparatively mild temperature, while the interior is subject to intense heat. During winter, for similar reasons, the interior becomes severely cold, while the sea-girt shore still enjoys a much milder temperature. But a greater modifying influence upon the climate are the winds to which it is subject. The source of these is at the equator, where the air, becoming rarefied from the effects of heat, rises and flows in vast masses toward the poles. On reaching colder latitudes, it descends to the earth, and as an undercurrent returns to the equator, and supplies the tropical vacuum caused by its previous ascent. If the earth were at rest, the two under and two upper currents would move at right angles to the equator. Is
Let's
at
hear
the
that
equator,
again.
where the air, becoming rarefied from comparatively mild temperature, while the interior is subject to intense heat. During winter, for similar reasons, the interior becomes severely cold, while the sea-girt shore still enjoys a much milder temperature. But a greater modifying influence upon the climate are the winds to which it is subject. The source of these is at the equator, where the air, becoming rarefied from the effects of heat, rises and flows in vast masses toward the poles. On reaching colder latitudes, it descends to the earth, and as an undercurrent returns to the equator, and supplies the tropical vacuum caused by its previous ascent. If the earth were at rest, the two under and two upper currents would move at right angles to the equator. But, owing to its daily revolution from west to east, the undercurrents, as they pass from the poles toward the equator where the rotation is greatest, fall behind the earth, and that in the northern hemisphere flows from the northeast, and that in the southern under
Let's
and
listen
two
to
upper
that
currents
again.
would move at right angles to the equator. But, owing to its daily revolution from west to east, the undercurrents, as they pass from the poles toward the equator where the rotation is greatest, fall behind the earth, and that in the northern hemisphere flows from the northeast, and that in the southern from the southeast. In like manner, the upper currents, flowing from the greater velocity of the equator toward the less at the poles, get in advance of the earth, and the one in the north flows from the southwest, and the other in the south from the northwest. If the globe were a perfectly smooth sphere, the flow of the wind as above described would be uniform, but the former being crested with mountain chains, the latter are broken into a great variety of local currents. In a belt of about 20 degrees on each side of the equator, the undercurrents blow with the greatest regularity, and are called trade winds, from their importance to navigation and commerce.
Their importance to navigate. The importance to navigate. Let me write that. To navigate for commerce. Y'all heard it, right? Peace, y'all. I'm about to get over there and see what Ab talking about. Jump in the chat and maybe get into a different conversation. We're gonna continue this after everybody's been asking me about about Scarface. They're like, oh my God, sis, when you gonna do part 2 to the Scarface? I'm getting emails, everything. So I am definitely letting you guys know we will be doing that for Women's Wednesday. I'm gonna do like a 15-minute overview of the lady we have been listening to. There's going to be a little surprise for some and for some confirmation. I'm gonna get into that for about 10 or 15 minutes. Then we will continue with part 2 of Blueface. Blueface. I should have put King Blue on my community tab some months ago, maybe about 2-3 months ago. I'm not even sure. It was a while back. But look on the community tab. You guys will see the information about the Cherokee King, King Blue, who was whooping their ass up and down the streets. Yeah, he was kicking early as morning dawn. Yeah, King Blue, he fired. He was a Cherokee king of the nation. Yes, so go look on my page, the community page, and you guys can get the information on that. Another thing is we're going to continue this read after we finish Scarface, because Scarface, it was a few pages left, depending on how deep it gets. Because remember, some of these stories I want to just read with you guys and get my first impression on what I'm seeing, so I can, see what I can discern from what I'm reading. And we're going to do it all together. So I'm excited about it myself. So yeah, I don't know. I've been anxious too to get into the rest of this story, especially with the part we ended on. So I'm going to continue this read. When we come back, we will start at the Illinois Antiquities and the Mound Builders. The Illinois, let me put that to Antiquities and the Mound Builders. Okay, that will be this evening, 6 o'clock Central Standard Time. Look forward to seeing all you guys. Good grand risings, Diane. Yes, the importance to navigate for commerce. Yes. All right, guys, y'all have a great grand day. We're about to get out of here, and I will get with you guys later. Peace, love, excellent energy, and the best of the day to everyone. Till later. I'm out.